If you manage DOT-regulated employees, you've probably wondered what exactly counts as a refusal to test. It's not as simple as someone saying, nope. Today we're breaking down the top 10 things every employer must know about DOT refusals to test, so you can stay compliant and avoid costly violations. First, let's understand the stakes. Under DOT regulations, a refusal to test is treated exactly the same as a positive drug test. That means immediate removal from safety-sensitive functions like driving a commercial motor vehicle, plus mandatory reporting to the FMCSA Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse for FMCSA violations. The consequences are serious, so it's critical that employers know what counts as a refusal and who has the authority to make that. Some refusals are determined by the employer, others by the medical review officer or MRO. Understanding who calls the shot in each scenario is essential, and in many cases, the employer still makes the final determination based on information from other parties. Pre-employment tests have a unique rule. If a job applicant gets cold feet in the waiting room and leaves before the collection even starts, maybe they got a better offer. That is not a refusal. The line is drawn when the collector hands over the specimen cup. Once the process begins and the applicant walks away, that's a refusal, and the employer must investigate and document before reporting it. Refusals don't always happen at the collection facility. If an employee drags her feet or simply doesn't show up for a test that the employer directs, that can also be a refusal. The employer has to define what timely means and communicate it clearly. Here's a real-world example. An employee was told to go immediately at 1 p.m. The collection site was closed for lunch, and instead of waiting 30 minutes, she left and returned to work. After review, the employer ruled it a refusal because the employee had been trained to stay until tested. What happens if an employee acts up at the collection site, if they refuse to empty their pockets, submit to an observed collection when required, or they're verbally abusive to the collector? The collector can stop the process and mark it down as a refusal for refusing to cooperate with the process. However, there's one important exception. If the employee refuses to sign the chain of custody form or initial the security seals but otherwise complete the collection, that alone is not a refusal, though it must be documented. Let's be clear here too, a refusal at the collection site is not determined by the collector, it is determined by the employer. So if this type of thing happens, make sure as the employer you get documentation from the collection site about what exactly happened. If an employee walks out of the collection site before providing a specimen and wasn't dismissed by the collector, that's a refusal. Employees are entitled up to 3 hours and 40 ounces of water to produce the 45 milliliter sample. The most important distinction here is I won't is a refusal. I can't might signal a medical condition known as a shy bladder, which is handled differently. If there is a refusal like this is employer determined. Shy bladder and shy lung scenarios are where the medical review officer takes the lead. If someone genuinely cannot provide a sample, the MRO works with the employee and their physician to determine whether a real medical condition exists. If the employee can provide medical documentation, the situation can be resolved. If not, and after a possible MRO exam or consultation with the employee's personal physician, it's ruled as a refusal to test. Attempting to cheat a drug test is treated as a refusal. If a collector catches someone with a synthetic urine device during the collection or the employee admits to tampering, it's over. That's a refusal. The confession can also come later during the MRO's review of an adulterated lab result. Either way, the consequences are identical to a positive test. If the And the refusal here might be determined by the MRO if it's during the interview, or it might be determined by the employer if a synthetic urine device is found at the time of collection. If the MRO directs an employee to complete additional steps, like a medical exam or a directly observed collection, and the employee ignores that directive, the employer can declare a refusal. Even here, it's the employer who makes the final call, not the MRO. Good documentation and written confirmation of instructions are critical to protecting yourself as the employer. Here's a nuance many employers miss. If an employee fails to call the MRO back after a positive test, even within the 72-hour window, that is not technically a refusal. It becomes an assumed positive or a non-contact positive. The result still disqualifies the employee from safety-sensitive work and must be reported, but the mechanism is different. Make sure your team knows this distinction. Finally, number 10, adulterated or substituted specimens. If the lab finds that a urine sample was tampered with, either by adding a masking substance or using synthetic urine, the MRO determines it a refusal test. This is one of the few situations where the MRO, not the employer, makes the final call. The outcome is the same: removal from duty and clearinghouse reporting for any regulated by FMCSA, so that's your CDL drivers. Let's do a quick recap. 10 scenarios that can constitute a refusal to test, ranging from not showing up on time to tampering with the specimen. Remember, in most cases, the employer makes the determination, often in consultation with the MRO or C-TPA. The key is to document every single step. If you're managing DOT-regulated employees and need help navigating refusals, random testing programs, or clearinghouse reporting, InOut Labs is here to help. We serve employers across all 50 states. Give us a call at 847-657-7900 or visit InOutLabs.com. If this video was helpful, please like, subscribe, and drop your questions in the comments below. We'll see you next time.